Dust from the construction site had worked its way into every crack and corner of my Ford F-350. The dashboard wore a permanent gray film, no matter how many times I wiped it down. My hands throbbed as I gripped the wheel, tendons aching from 10 hours of wrangling concrete pours and checking every beam and joint on the Morrison job. Sunlight slanted through my chipped windshield, picking out all the scratches, every scuff spot, every reminder that this truck had been with me for 5 years straight. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Maria again. Mom, don't watch Aunt Marjorie's story. Naturally, I opened Instagram right away. The video stuttered to life on my cracked screen, some chirpy pop song playing as Marjorie floated into view. She wore this cream Ralph Lauren dress, probably worth more than my truck payment, and her hair, all glowy and perfect, caught the afternoon light as she gestured at the lake house. My lake house. The place where I'd spent every summer as a kid, carved my initials into the dock post, made quiet plans to bring my own family someday. Marjorie's voice was all breathy and staged for her followers. Welcome to our little lakeside paradise. I'm giving you an exclusive tour of our family estate. She glided through each room, the great room with its stone fireplace, the kitchen with that big farmhouse sink. I knew every inch. Then she headed to the back hallway. My stomach tightened. And this, she said, shoving open a door, used to be my sister's childhood bedroom, but we turned it into extra storage because the house just has so much space. It's a waste to leave rooms empty. The camera swept across what used to be my space. The window seat, where I'd read book after book, was buried under boxes. The closet where I'd hidden my architecture sketches now stood open, showing off rows of Callaway golf clubs. Everett's collection. At least 15 grand's worth of titanium and carbon fiber. Winter coats hung on a rolling rack. Skis leaned where my bed once was. Everett's golf gallery, Marjorie laughed, running her hand down a driver. It's perfect for all his toys. I stopped watching. My vision narrowed, the phone slick in my hand. I didn't cry. My stomach just flipped, sending up a wave of nausea. I squeezed the wheel until my knuckles went white. The sadness I thought I'd feel didn't show up. Instead, something colder settled in, a sharp anger that felt almost precise. This wasn't new. I'd always been the afterthought. But watching my childhood get reduced to extra storage for 2,000 strangers, that broke something in me. A memory surfaced, sharp and clear. Rose's 9th birthday, 2 years back. The two of us at my little kitchen table, candles drooping into a grocery store cake. I'd called Mom 3 times. When she finally picked up, Beatrice sounded distracted, annoyed. Linda, I can't talk right now. Marjorie just picked up her new Mercedes, and I'm helping her at the DMV. It's Rose's birthday, Mom. You promised you'd call her. There's a birthday every year, Linda. Don't be dramatic. Click. The line went dead. Rose blew out her candles alone. I told her grandma was stuck in traffic. She believed me. She was 9, sweet, still certain that people always make room for you. Sitting in my dust-choked truck, Marjorie's voice echoing from my phone, I finally saw it. My fatal flaw. I kept believing if I was good enough, obedient enough, worked myself to the bone, my mother would finally notice me, maybe even love me, maybe leave a room for me in the family home. All it got me was contempt. I turned the key. The truck shuddered to life. But I didn't head home to our cramped rental with Maria and Rose. I turned north. My hands knew the way, roads I'd driven 100 times for work. 45 minutes later, I rolled through the busted gates of the Hawthorne estate. The place towered against a bruised sky, a roaring 20s beauty left to rot after the owner died 3 years ago. I'd driven past it, walked the perimeter once or twice, making mental notes. Hand-carved corbels, slate roof, damaged, but fixable, wraparound porch with those perfect spindles, stuff that makes a preservation architect's heart race. It was in foreclosure. The bank had tried to sell it for 1.5 years. No one wanted it. Too remote. Way too expensive to fix up. Way too much work. I stood there staring at those rusted gates as the light faded, October air sharp in my lungs. 50 acres. 18 rooms. A ballroom with battered old parquet. The kitchen, commercial grade, really just needed new appliances and better ventilation, nothing wild. My phone was in my hand before I even realized I'd decided. Caleb? Linda, he answered, second ring. I could hear his workshop in the background, the high whine of a saw cutting through pine. You still got that bank broker's number? The one from the Morrison foreclosure? Yeah. Why? I want to bid on the Hawthorne estate. Tonight. Now. He went quiet. You're serious. Dead serious. That place is a money pit, Linda. It'll swallow you. Years of work. I looked up at the sagging roof, broken windows catching the last bit of daylight. I know. I've counted every rotten board, measured every inch. I know exactly what it could be. What changed? He sounded cautious, like I was about to jump. Everything, I told him. Send the number. 3 days later, I sat in a beige conference room that reeked of stale coffee and nerves. 7 bidders came. 6 left empty-handed. I got the Hawthorne estate for $350,000, honestly. A steal. The land alone was worth double. The bank officer looked almost sorry as he slid the paperwork over. You know what you're getting into? I signed the LLC papers I'd filed that morning, Phoenix Preservation, LLC. Not my own name. Nothing my family could sniff out if they went looking. I'm a preservation architect, I told him. This is my job. What I didn't mention, I'd emptied my retirement, taken out a loan that made my accountant sweat, chased every historic grant I could. All in, $1.3 million, just enough if I was careful and if I did most of the work myself. I planned to. The real work started the next morning. Caleb and I stood in the great hall, breath fogging in the November cold. It had already dropped to 20 overnight, and winter up here in the high peaks was just getting started. Where do we start? He asked, tool belt slung over his shoulder. I pulled out the project timeline I'd been building for 3 days straight, running on caffeine and stubbornness. Foundation first. Then the roof. Then every system, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. We winterize what we can, detail work weights for summer. 18 months at least. I know. He studied my face. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. We worked through that first winter like people possessed. When it dropped to 10 below in January, we kept going. Caleb and I wore so many layers we could hardly move, hands buried in gloves inside gloves, faces wrapped up against the wind that screamed down from the mountains. Material trucks couldn't always make it up when the road iced over. On those days, we hauled everything ourselves, oak beams that took both of us, bags of mortar that left bruises on our shoulders, copper piping coiled and dragged up the hill like Sisyphus with a stone. My hands, used to pencils and drafting plans, turned into something else. Skin cracked, bled from the cold and the mortar. Calluses layered up. My back screamed from hauling debris. My architect's eye for detail gave way to a contractor's obsession with what would actually hold. We weren't alone, though. Uncle Theodore, my mother's brother, 30 years in the Army Corps, showed up one freezing February morning with a thermos of soup and an envelope of cash. Don't tell your mother, he said, stuffing $500 into my hand. She doesn't need to know everything. Uncle Theo, I can't. You can and you will. Think of it like planting a seed. I've seen the blueprints. You're not just fixing up a house, you're building something that matters. He took in the gutted rooms, slow and careful, and I could see it in his face. He got it. Your mother always wanted you to play it safe, but you? You were never meant to fit inside those lines. Every weekend, Maria showed up, 14, all elbows and curiosity, lugging his laptop and a bag of wire strippers. He mapped out the network. He sketched cable runs over my blueprints, talking fiber optics, mesh Wi-Fi, a hub in the basement that would run the whole building. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, he said, already thinking 3 steps ahead. Even Rose pitched in. She was 11, quiet, meticulous. She'd show up after school, homework already done, asking for sandpaper and would stain. She spent afternoons on the grand staircase, working each riser by hand, coaxing beauty out of battered oak. One night in March, we all sat huddled around a humming space heater in the future lobby, eating takeout. Rose looked up, hands dusty, eyes wide. Mom? This house is huge. Will Grandma live here when it's done? I put down my coffee and turned her hands over. So small, so strong. Only people with sandpaper on their palms get to walk through the front door, I told her. That's the rule. She thought about it, then nodded. Sounds right. Spring came, and suddenly everything felt possible. We got the roof sealed, the foundation set. Every window either restored or new. The mechanicals finally kicked on. Heat, water, electricity, all running through wires and pipes we'd pulled ourselves. By summer, we were painting walls in colors that matched the old photos, hanging light fixtures I'd tracked down from salvage yards in 3 states. The furniture was this mix of rescued antiques and soft, modern pieces. 18 suites, each one named after a local landmark. Walk in, and you'd feel like you'd stepped back in time, except with heated bathroom floors and Wi-Fi that actually worked. Fast forward a year, May, 18 months since I signed those first papers. I stood out on the finished porch with a glass of champagne. Caleb had brought it to celebrate. The appraisal came in that morning for $1 million. I'd taken $1.3 million and a year and a half of scraped knuckles and sleepless nights and turned it into something worth 3 times as much. But more than that, I'd taken a wreck and turned it into a place people wanted to visit. People would drive up from Manhattan just to stay here. You did it, Caleb said, clinking his glass against mine. I looked out at the mountains, the gardens we'd planted, the new sign at the gate, Hawthorne Estate, historic boutique hotel. We did it, I said. Then, softer, without them. My body was worn down in ways I never knew possible. But my spirit? Never stronger. By the soft opening in May, I wasn't the same woman I'd been at the start. I invited local shop owners, the Chamber of Commerce, even a food blogger from Albany who covered Adirondack getaways. The opening weekend, every suite booked. The dining room full of people marveling at the restored moldings, the seasonal menu we'd built with a chef from Lake Placid. That's when Marjorie found the website. I didn't know she'd seen it until the complaints started rolling in. First, someone tipped off the health department about unsanitary kitchen conditions at a place I'd never even mentioned to my family. 2 days later, a zoning complaint, accusing us of running a hotel illegally. Permits be damned. The health inspector showed up on a Friday, right in the middle of a tasting event for a corporate group. He was polite, but thorough. 20 potential clients watched him check the fridges and go through our logs. I didn't panic. 18 months of wrestling with building codes had prepped me for this exact moment. Would you like to see our permits? I asked, keeping my tone steady, and reached for the binder, my security blanket. Inside was everything. Every inspection, certification, and bit of paperwork New York State demanded from a commercial hospitality business. Food service permit, fire safety, ADA compliance, occupancy, historic preservation variances, it was all there. I knew every code section by heart. That's just what preservation architects do. We live and breathe regulations. The inspector flipped through the binder. At first, he looked skeptical, but as he kept turning pages, I caught a shift, impressed, maybe even a little surprised. He checked the kitchen's ventilation, the fire suppression system, the grease trap. Nothing. He didn't find a single issue because there were none. This is some of the most thorough documentation I've seen, he finally admitted, snapping his folder shut. Whoever filed that complaint clearly didn't know what they were talking about. I walked him to the door, keeping my game face on, even though I could barely contain the satisfaction pulsing through me. On the porch, he hesitated. There was something new in his eyes. Was it respect? Or maybe pity? Ma'am, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but... He pulled out his phone, scrolled, and held up the screen. This is the complaint we got through our system. The form itself was bland, all the usual bureaucratic boxes. But 2 things jumped out right away. First, the photo, an aerial shot, clearly taken from a drone, showing the whole estate from above. The kind of flashy picture Marjorie's oldest, Callum, loved to splash across social media, always showing off his latest gadgets. Second, the email address used to file the complaint, margequeenv@email.com. Not exactly subtle. I can't confirm who filed it, the inspector said, careful now, but I thought you should know someone's going out of their way to cause you trouble. After he left, I just stood in my office, still a library at heart, with those old built-in bookshelves, and stared at the screenshot I'd snapped. My own sister, trying to sabotage me. She'd gone anonymous, probably thinking she was clever, forgetting that even bureaucracy leaves a trail. The old Linda would have called her in tears, begging for answers, desperate to patch things up. But I wasn't that person anymore. This time, I did something else. I had the screenshot printed, framed in sleek black with museum glass. Hung it right beside my architecture license and the LLC documents, pride of place. Underneath, I added a little brass plaque, motivation for success. 2 days later, Caleb came by and spotted it. He laughed so hard he had to sit down. "You're really embracing the villain era, huh?" I just smiled. "I'm not the villain," I told him. "I'm just done being the victim." The zoning complaint fizzled out once I turned in our spotless permit record. The health department wrapped up their investigation with a commendation for our facility standards. Bookings kept coming in. Life moved on. But the real surprise landed a few weeks later, completely by accident. As the owner of a growing business with real estate to match, I'd been invited to join the VIP banking program at our local branch. Perks everywhere, priority service, my own account manager, access to all sorts of commercial lending options. What I didn't see coming was the conversation during my quarterly review. Tom, my banker, leaned in. "How's the hotel doing?" "We've heard great things around town." "Better than we projected," I said, showing him the occupancy rates on my tablet. "That's fantastic. Honestly, it's nice to see someone in your family doing well." Then he caught himself. "Sorry, that was out of line." I looked up. "What do you mean?" He shifted in his seat, uneasy. "I shouldn't say anything. Client confidentiality and all that." "Tom." I didn't raise my voice, but he must have seen something serious in my eyes. He sighed, dropped his voice. "Your brother-in-law applied for a consolidation loan last month. We had to turn him down. His credit, let's just say he's maxed out every card and his debt-to-income ratio is a problem." My mind spun. Everett Devereaux, the investment banker who always wore perfectly tailored suits, always drove that leased BMW. The man who convinced my mother he was rich enough to take care of Marjorie forever. "How much of a problem?" I asked quietly. Tom paused, weighing his options, then finally said it. "Delinquency. Level 3. Multiple accounts and collections. We're talking about the kind of mess where they start eyeing your stuff for repossession. I'm telling you this because I've seen what happens when families keep quiet about money problems. It gets ugly fast." I leaned back, letting it all sink in. My sister's husband was drowning in debt, designer clothes, golf clubs, the works. The whole luxury routine was just smoke and mirrors, all of it balanced on maxed-out credit cards. And they had no idea I knew. "Thanks, Tom," I said. "I appreciate your discretion." That night, I sat on my balcony, the one off the owner's suite I'd claimed for myself, tucked away in the East Wing. I thought about Marjorie's Instagram, the filtered photos, the expensive dresses, the family estate she made look effortless. In reality, if I was right, the whole place was mortgaged to the edge. Then there was my mother, who'd always picked security over love. She chose the daughter with the successful husband, not the one with calloused hands and a knack for architecture. And I thought about that framed email in my office, my sister's cruelty, captured forever behind glass. I didn't call anyone, didn't brag. I just tucked the information away like a chess piece, something I might need if the game changed. Patience, I'd learned during those 18 months of restoration, packs its own kind of punch. And that patience finally paid off. When the Hawthorne estate opened in June, we blew away every expectation. Booked solid all summer. The regional magazines featured us and companies from Boston and New York started calling about retreats. My conservative revenue numbers? We'd already passed them by July. Then my mother called. "Linda." Beatrice's voice was syrupy, the way she got when she wanted something. "I saw the article in Adirondack Life. The photos are stunning. You must be so proud." I sat at my desk, staring at that framed email. "Thank you, Mom. I was thinking Marjorie and Everett and I could come visit this weekend. I want to see what you've done. We could stay in that presidential suite. Great publicity for you, you know." having family there for the opening. Of course. She just assumed she could waltz into the space I'd built with my own hands. She wanted the best room in the house, the one that booked for $800 a night and was already reserved for months. I'd love that, Mom, I said, keeping my voice even. But I've signed a management contract with investors. We have a strict policy, no family bookings during blackout dates. It keeps things clean for our commercial clients. The system's already locked out family reservations for the first year. Silence. What do you mean locked out? Linda, don't be ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. It's standard practice if you want credibility with your clients. I'm sure you understand. I certainly do not understand. Her voice snapped. That house has 18 rooms. It's massive. And you're telling me you can't squeeze your own mother in somewhere? You were banned from the lake house because it was too cramped, and now you're being stingy when you have all this space? The lake house had 7 bedrooms. My childhood room wasn't lost to space. It became a storage closet because nobody cared enough to keep it. I let the silence stretch, then spoke slowly, each word sharp as a scalpel. You're right, Mom. My house is huge. 18 suites, 50 acres. Absolutely enormous. But it's also perfectly full, at least, when it comes to you. I hung up before she could answer. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the rush of finally saying what I'd swallowed for 42 years. I'd built something they couldn't take, and I got to decide who walked through the door. The blowback came fast. Marjorie posted a vague Facebook status. Funny how money changes people. Some of us remember where we came from, and some of us ditch family as soon as we get a little success. Stay humble, everyone. 73 likes. My mother's friends, Marjorie's country club crowd, all nodding along, not knowing the real story. Then Caleb commented, and everything shifted. Weird. When Linda was hauling oak beams up a mountain in a blizzard, none of you were there. When she was pulling 90-hour weeks to hit inspection deadlines, where was the family? Now you want to show up and enjoy it for free? That's not how sweat equity works. People jumped in right away. Questions started pouring in. Uncle Theodore couldn't resist. He tossed in a comment about how he'd watched me rebuild that estate. Just me and my stubbornness, the kind you get from being underestimated all your life. Then Maria posted a photo. His hands, all blistered from stringing cable. The caption, built, not given. 6 hours later, Marjorie deleted her post. But screenshots are forever, and folks already sent them to me. I tucked them into a folder called Receipts, right next to the health department complaint. The fallout kept coming. My mother called again, crying this time. How could you embarrass your sister like this? Letting people attack her online? I said, Mom, I didn't let anyone do anything. Caleb told the truth. If Marjorie didn't want the world to know she wasn't around during the hard part, maybe she shouldn't have gone public about me abandoning the family. You're being cruel, Linda. No, I said, calm as I could. I'm being fair. There's a difference. She hung up on me, a classic move, assuming I'd call back and apologize. I didn't. I just turned off my phone, went downstairs, and started helping prep for dinner. Some pharma execs were celebrating a good quarter. Later, after the guests left, I sat in the great hall with a glass of wine, staring at the fire we'd coaxed back to life in that old stone hearth. Shadows danced on the walls I'd stripped and repainted myself. Caleb found me and dropped into the chair across from me. You okay? He asked. I was honest. Better than okay. For the first time, I wasn't squeezing myself into spaces that never fit. He raised his beer. To building your own space. To building it without them, I said. We sat there in an easy silence, two people who'd actually made something, sweat and all. Outside, the mountain air had that sharp autumn edge, and the estate lights spilled across the grounds I'd landscaped. Everything I could see from that window I'd built. No one could take it from me. The leaves turned gold, then rusty, as September wound down. The estate almost ran itself now, so I could actually sneak a day off. That's how I ended up at my distant cousin Rebecca's wedding at a vineyard, 40 minutes south. The place was pretty in that Pinterest-perfect way. String lights, wine barrels, wildflowers in mason jars, a barn made into a dance hall. I came alone. My kids stayed back at the estate, helping out with a corporate retreat. And then I saw them, Marjorie and Everett, dressed like they meant business, but you could tell the style was last season. Her Gucci bag was 2 years old. His suit, while tailored, had frayed cuffs. To most people, they looked successful. But I'd spent enough hours around fabrics to spot the shortcuts. My mother stood with them, arm looped through Marjorie's, playing the part of the loving family. They hadn't noticed me yet. I planned to keep it that way, just fade into the crowd, until Marjorie caught my eye at cocktail hour. She marched across the lawn, Everett trailing behind, and I saw people turn to watch what was obviously a family showdown. Linda. Her smile was all teeth. What a surprise to see you. I figured you'd be too busy with your little hotel project. It's running smoothly, I said, keeping my voice flat. The management team is solid. How convenient. She took a sip of champagne, looking me over. Actually, I'm glad I found you. I wanted to ask a favor. Callum's turning 16 next month. I'd love to have his party at your estate. All that space, the grounds, perfect. Think of it as a gift from his aunt. People nearby drifted closer. The whole tent went quiet, waiting. I smiled. I'd be happy to host Callum's party. Our private event rate needs a full deposit 2 weeks ahead. I can have my coordinator send the contract Monday. Marjorie waved it off. Oh, don't worry about forms. My assistant already emailed your office yesterday with Everett's payment authorization. Just process it. We're family. She thought she had me boxed in if I refused after she said she'd already paid. I'd look like the petty one. Everett stepped in then, hand on her arm, playing backup. He pulled out an American Express Platinum card and dropped it on the cocktail table with a heavy clunk. Or just swipe it now if you're nervous. We'll pay whatever the rate is. Don't embarrass the family by acting cheap. The card sat between us, catching the October sun. Everyone was watching, my mother, aunts, uncles, Rebecca's family, half the wedding party. I stared at the card. Then at Everett, all confidence. Then at Marjorie, looking way too pleased with herself. My voice carried across the suddenly hushed lawn. Everett, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't take payment from that card. He hesitated, just for a second. What do you mean? It's an Amex Platinum. No limit. I kept my tone neutral. Actually, when my assistant ran the authorization Marjorie sent over back in May, it came back declined. The error said, transaction declined, card confiscated, delinquency, level 3. You're not just over your limit. The bank's issued an asset seizure order. I looked right at him. Legally, I can't take payment from a debt account. Silence. Everett's face lost all its swagger. He turned pale so fast it was almost funny. That's not, you can't. I'm sorry, I said, and for a second, I really was. Not sorry for exposing him, but sorry it had to happen this way. If you want to book an event, I'll need certified funds. Cashier's check or wire. I shrugged. But with your credit status, I get it if that's not possible right now. Marjorie just stared at her husband, confusion morphing into horror as she realized what I'd said. Everett? What is she talking about? He grabbed the card off the table, his hands shaking so badly the metal clinked. This is Linda. You had no right. I had every right to verify a payment method submitted to my business. My voice was quiet, but I meant every word. I'm sorry you're having financial problems. Really. But I can't extend credit, not with this situation. Everett grabbed Marjorie's arm and hurried her away, her protests trailing off as they made for the parking lot. I watched them go. Everett still clutched the Amex, that heavy little symbol of wealth, which, honestly, had always been fake. My mother stood frozen, champagne glass half raised. The whispers started first low, then building. The legend of Everett Devereaux, investment banker extraordinaire, just crumbled in front of 40 people. I picked up my own wine, took a slow sip, and felt something shift inside me. 3 generations of family drama, suddenly moving beneath my feet. Uncle Theodore appeared at my side. That was brutal, he said, quiet. She forced my hand, I told him. I would have sent the contract privately if she hadn't tried to corner me. He squeezed my shoulder. Your grandmother would have been proud. She couldn't stand pretense. The wedding rolled on, but people started to give me a wide berth, like honesty might be catching. My mother left early, didn't say goodbye. I stayed for the ceremony, watched Rebecca marry her high school sweetheart. And something loosened inside me. I'd spent years trying to fit into their story, the struggling daughter, the disappointment, the one who supposedly needed their help. But I'd built something better than all of them, and when they tried to take it for free, I just told the truth. Truth isn't cruel. It only feels cruel if you're used to living behind lies. I drove home as the sun set behind the mountains, the lights of Hawthorne Estate twinkling from the access road. My place. My rules. Built without them. The quiet didn't last. Exactly 32 days after the wedding, the foreclosure notice hit the public records. I wasn't looking for it. I'd stopped checking their finances after that day, but Uncle Theodore called me. The lake house, he said. Bank took possession yesterday. Beatrice has 30 days to move out. I sat at my desk, stared at the framed email on my wall, and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No pity. Just a flat calm, like the lake at dawn. Where will she go? I asked, because that's what you're supposed to say. She called Marjorie first. But Marjorie and Everett are moving to a 2-bedroom in Plattsburgh. No room for a third. He paused. She hasn't called you yet? No. She will. He was right. That night, while I was going over next month's bookings with my coordinator, my mother's number flashed on my phone. I let it ring 4 times, then picked up. Linda. Her voice was small, trembling. I'd never heard her sound like that. I need to talk to you about something important. I'm listening. The bank took the lake house. I have to be out by the end of November and I don't have anywhere to go. Marjorie's new place is tiny. And I guess you thought, what, that I'd have space for her here? I finished up and glanced out my office window. The estate grounds stretched out below. Gardens rose and I planted together. Those stone paths Caleb laid, he did that with his own hands. I remembered the sandpaper rule. Who actually earned the right to be here? To walk through these doors. Mom, the apartments on the south side have move-in specials right now. They're offering good rates for seniors. I can text you the number for the property manager. Silence. Then, real quiet, she said, you're really going to do this? Leave your own mother homeless. You're not homeless. You've got options. They're just not the ones you wanted. I kept my voice steady. Professional. I have to go. I'm in a meeting. I hung up before she could say anything else. Before I could start feeling guilty again. Then I turned off my phone and went back to work. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from regret, just this restless energy that finally got me up at midnight. I grabbed a sweater and headed out onto the big porch, the one that wraps around the whole front of the house. The air was cold, sharp. I could still smell wood smoke from the fireplace in the guest lounge. The mountains loomed out there, dark against the stars. Somewhere, maybe 20 Maria North, the lake house sat empty. Probably already had a for sale sign out front. I grew up in that house. Always trying to make myself smaller, fit whatever spaces they gave me. Always hoping if I was quiet enough or helpful enough, maybe they'd finally see me as worth loving. They never did. But I stopped trying to fit. I built something of my own instead, bigger, better than anything they ever handed me. Movement caught my eye. Maria was out on the lawn with Hayes, Marjorie's youngest, 12 years old, with that shy smile. He turned up 3 weeks ago, asking if he could help with yard work for a little cash. My son led the way toward the lodge, both of them dragging a heavy sled stacked high with split firewood, restocking the porch racks for the morning. Hayes came every weekend since the wedding. He never mentioned his parents. Just showed up with work gloves and a willingness to pitch in. Last week, he helped Caleb fix the dock. The week before, he spent hours helping our housekeeper flip beds. He was learning the sandpaper rule. No one even had to spell it out. Mom? Rose's voice behind me from the doorway. Can't sleep. Just thinking, I said, holding out an arm. She tucked herself against my side, still squeezing in, even though she's getting big for it at 11. About Grandma? A little. Maria says she's mad because you won't let her live here. I looked down at her, all earnest and thoughtful in the porch light. What do you think about that? She didn't rush. She never does. I think she wasn't there when we needed her. Like when she missed my birthday because Aunt Marjorie's car was more important. Or when you were building this place and she never came to help. That's true. So it seems fair she can't come now. Rose looked up at me. Is that mean? It feels a little mean. It's not mean to have boundaries, sweetheart. It's not mean to say people have to earn their place in your life. She nodded, then brightened. Hayes told me his mom is really sad. But he likes coming here because it's the first place where people care if he works hard, not just about what his dad does. My throat tightened. Yeah, he said after his dad lost all his money, his friends stopped inviting him. But here, nobody cares about that. They just care if he shows up and does the work. I pulled her closer and watched Maria and Hayes stack the last birch logs on the rack. Their breath hung in the freezing air. My nephew was learning something real out here, understanding that what you build with your hands means more than what you inherit or the family name stamped on a mailbox. Caleb showed up from around the side of the building with a cold beer in each hand. He passed one to me. Thought you'd be out here. You can't hide much from me, I said. Nah, he replied. I just know that look you get when something big's rolling around in your head. He dropped into one of the Adirondack chairs, and Rose slipped back inside to finish her homework. Theo told me about the foreclosure, he said. Yeah. How do you feel about it? I had to sit with that one for a second. How did I feel, really, watching the house I grew up in get swallowed up by the bank? Watching my mom lose the place she'd clung to harder than she ever held onto me? Relieved, I told him, finally. Is that terrible? I asked. No, he said. It's honest. We sat there for a while, not saying much, sipping our beers and looking up at the stars spinning overhead. Out in the distance, Maria and Hayes finished up with the wood and headed toward the equipment shed, laughing. Their voices drifted over to us in the cold. We did it, Caleb said, voice low. I looked out at the estate. Every window was warm with light. Every guest room full. The place ran smooth because we'd built it right from the start. I remembered those revenue statements, how we'd blown past our first-year projections by 40%. Corporate clients already lining up for next year's retreats. That couple from Boston who got engaged on our dock last week and now want to get married here next fall. I thought about my kids, learning firsthand that real success comes from showing up and working hard, not from hiding and hoping someone powerful swoops in. I thought about Uncle Theodore, who always saw me for who I was. About Hayes, finally finding a place where effort mattered more than appearances. And I thought about that old Ford F-350, gathering dust in the garage, a little monument to where I started. Remembering sitting in that truck, hands aching, watching my sister turn my old bedroom into a storage closet. Yeah, Caleb, I said, raising my beer toward the mountains and the stubborn empire I'd built with bloody hands. We built it, and we did it without them. The night was cold, clear, sharp with stars. And for the first time in 42 years, I fit right into my own life, because I'd made this place myself.